Hi, 7th graders. This video should help you with notes on pages 4, 5, 6, and 7 in the Unit 4 Government Packet. We are going to start on page 4. And in this unit, we are looking at how the Constitution sets up the government of the United States. And part of the government is obviously electing the president. We use a system called the Electoral College to elect the president. And this map on page 4 shows how the Electoral College worked to elect Joe Biden in this most recent presidential election. So the way that this works is that a president needs 270 Electoral College votes to become president. And the number of electoral votes each state has is determined by the number of members in the House of Representatives that state has, which is based on the population of the state. And then each state gets 2 representatives in the Senate. So New York, because we have a pretty big population, we have 29 Electoral College votes. The lowest you can see like Wyoming and Montana have very small populations, and so they only have 3 Electoral College votes. California has the highest population, so it has the most Electoral College votes at 55. So every 10 years, a census is done to see how many people live in the United States. That's actually being done this year. And so if the state increases in population, they gain electors in the Electoral College. And if the state decreases in population, they lose electors in the Electoral College. And New York will probably lose a few electors in this most recent census. So usually states are pretty set on if they vote for Democrats or Republicans. Like New York is a state that consistently votes for Democrats. There are states like Florida, Pennsylvania, Ohio that swing back and forth between voting for Democrats and Republicans. And because of that, they become very important states in presidential elections. So swing state switches between the Democratic and Republican candidate for president. So in this past election, we were waiting a long time to hear from Georgia, which is a state that swung from usually being red, swung to blue to vote for Biden. The Electoral College can be kind of controversial because sometimes the person with the most votes doesn't actually win. So the candidate that gets the most total votes might not get the most votes in the Electoral College, and it's the Electoral College, not the total votes, that determine who's president. So sometimes the candidates with fewer overall votes wins the Electoral College. This has happened more frequently in more recent elections. It happened in 2000 in the Bush v. Gore election. George Bush was elected by the Electoral College, even though Al Gore received more votes in the popular vote. It happened again in 2016, where Trump became president through the Electoral College, even though Hillary Clinton got more votes than he did in the popular vote. So we really elect our president through the states, not through a national election, which is how the Constitution designed it. We're going to move on to page 5 now and take some notes on checks and balances. The Constitution is set up to have 3 branches of government: the executive, legislative, and judicial branch. Each of those branches is given certain powers, and those powers check and balance each other so that no one branch of government can become the most powerful. So each branch has a power, and it can be checked or limited. You might want to think about checks as a limit on power. So for example, it's Congress' job to pass a law, but in order for it to actually become a law, the president has to sign the law. But he can also veto the law, and then it will not become a law. If the Congress passes a law and the president signs it, and it's an unfair law, the Supreme Court may declare the law unconstitutional. And if the Supreme Court declares the law unconstitutional, no one has to follow it. If the president vetoes a law passed by Congress, Congress can then check the president by overriding the veto with a 2/3 vote. And the law doesn't have to be passed with 2/3, but the veto does, or the override of the veto does. The president has the power to appoint a new Supreme Court justice, but it's the Senate that approves or denies his nomination. If a Supreme Court judge or justice shows misconduct in office, the Congress may impeach and remove the justice. The president has the power to make treaties with other countries, but the Senate approves or denies the treaty, so the president can make a treaty that then is denied by the Senate, and then it doesn't, the United States is no longer bound by the treaty. Oops, sorry, it should say treaty, not nomination. Now, the president is the commander-in-chief, so he's in charge of the military, but it's Congress that actually spends money. So if the president asks for money for defense, Congress can either approve or deny the spending. So they share power over the military. All right, so that's checks and balances. Another important check and balance of the president's power is the impeachment process. And this process is what the government will go through if they want to fire a president. And this process starts in the House of Representatives, which can vote to impeach the president, which doesn't mean he's fired. It just means he's been accused of a crime. And just like you would in the regular world, once you've been accused of a crime, you're put on trial. And it's the Senate that puts the president on trial for whatever crime the House accused him of. The Senate acts like a jury and decides if he's innocent or guilty of the crime. The Supreme Court Chief Justice is the judge of the trial, making sure that it's fair. There are two possible outcomes to the trial. Either the president is found innocent and then he keeps his job, or he's found guilty and then he's no longer the president. So we've only ever gone down this path. There's never been a president who's been impeached and convicted, found guilty, and fired. But we've gone down this impeachment path to the president keeping their job 4 times, with Andrew Johnson, who was president after Lincoln was assassinated. Bill Clinton was impeached and found innocent, and Donald Trump was impeached and found innocent 2 times. So he was impeached twice and found innocent twice. And there's never been a president who has been fired after being impeached. We had one president resign. Richard Nixon resigned before this process could start. He probably would have been fired if he had not resigned. All right, our last page is another way the government is set up so that there's not too much power in one branch. And it's called the federal system. And this was created because founders were worried that the federal government, the government in Washington, was going to have too much power. So they divided power between the states and the federal governments. This division of power between the state and federal governments is called federalism, or the federal system. So we're going to create a Venn diagram here and see what powers are given to the federal government, to the government in Washington, which powers are shared, and which powers only the states have. So some of them kind of can just intuitively make sense. Only the federal government can print money. That's why you don't have to change money from New York money to Pennsylvania money. We use the same money in all of the states. The federal government is also the only government that can declare war. So New York can't declare war on Canada, only the United States can. All governments can collect taxes. That's a shared power. and all governments are supposed to keep people safe. The Constitution is pretty specific about powers that only the state is allowed to have, and a big one is established schools. That's why we have state universities and not a national university in the United States, because only the states can establish schools. It's also why you take New York State exams and not United States exams. The state is also in charge of licensing, so marriage license, hunting license, driving license, certain business license, our New York State has power over. There are a lot more powers that the Constitution divides between the federal and the state governments, but I thought we would just do two, so we wouldn't have to write quite so much. That's it for the notes on pages 4, 5, 6, and 7 in the Unit 4 packet. Thanks for listening. Bye.